Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Marianne Petrie. I have a return guest back on. I have Shurouk Mansour. She is a life coach. She was last on my show, season 3, episode 118. And she's an entrepreneur, a mind adjustment, life coach, and counselor. And her main purpose is to work hand in hand with her client and to bring out the hidden potential and strength so they can view things from a positive perspective, as well as seeing the beauty and power of where positive thinking can take her client. Today, we're going to talk about addictions and how that truly feels, and also resources for people with addictions. We're going to have ourselves a conversation because the last time we spoke, we talked about the importance of addressing past trauma so it does not repeat itself. So welcome back, Shurouk. How are you?
Thank you so much, Marianne, for the warm welcome. I'm doing wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing fine. I'm glad you're back on. We can talk about, addiction, and I don't even think I even talked about this on my podcast before. So I'm glad you're bringing this up.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much for having me back. And I chose this topic because it's something that's very important. A lot of people are dealing with this situation, and not many individuals know how to seek help, or even if they have a loved one who has an addiction, they're unable to really realize how to nurture them at that time, give them love, and care for them. So hopefully we can lessen the stigma around addiction in this talk, and to bring more knowledge to the base of addiction as well.
Mhm. And there's so
And
many. Oh, go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. You go ahead.
no, you're fine. Go ahead. Go ahead. I was just going to just ask you, just in general, what comes to your mind when you think about addiction?
I
What do
guess
you?
I think of alcoholism first. I guess because when I was a little kid, you have
Yeah.
relatives that are alcoholics.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
now there's more forms of it, with meth
Yeah.
and things like that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, and it's important what you just mentioned. Sometimes you relate addiction to either an experience you had in your life, or a preformed different type of notion of what addiction is, what we learned and growing up, and just what we see on television or advertising and whatnot. So I wanted to mention that addiction can come into so many different forms as well. And you mentioned alcohol, of course, that's one of the main ones. And and many individuals have addictions such as gaming, for
Mhm.
example. They have to game for a specific amount of hours just so they can feel comfortable. That could form into an addiction. And individuals a lot of times go shopping. They have an addiction for shopping. They have an
Mhm.
addiction for working, or let's say making money. So each one of us has tendencies towards an addiction in some sort of way. But as you mentioned, the most challenging of them all would be the alcohol, substance use,
Mhm.
and the drug addictions that we have going on. So
Oh.
I just want to put that out there, because a lot of times when we talk about, addictions, the first thing that comes to our mind is basically either something we've been related to, or something that's going on in the news at the moment, or something that, we have just learned about. But the depth of it is so important to understand that, every single person could form an addiction in some sort of way if we're not self-aware of what we're dealing with in our life, and our the way we're dealing with our emotions, and just life situations in general.
Mhm. And I think, there's addictions where it's really bad, and there are some people that are addicted, but it's not affecting them very badly. I don't know how to
Mhm.
explain that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that makes sense. You're right. So individuals, since we all have tendencies towards some type of addiction, it's important to recognize the personality styles that we have. And underneath that addiction, a lot of times there is OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, or personalities that are very addictive. And so, what I always try to help parents identify in their children, or even individuals who feel like maybe they're getting off of track with their, daily life habits, and they just feel like things are just going downwards, they're going down a road that they don't want to go down, is to recognize, how satisfied are you with what you do? Do you
Mhm.
always push yourself to do more? Where do you have your boundaries set? And do you have obsessions? Do you have compulsions that come with it? Do you have personalities that are very addictive to things? And if you do, then it's so important to try to detach in a healthy way. Try to find ways to detach in a um, healthy way, because as we mentioned in our previous podcasts, and we talked about trauma, and if it's not dealt with and it's not solved and it's not healed through, then a lot of times it can cause many type of disorders, mental health disorders, that can be even more debilitating than what they are undergoing at that moment. So for instance, a lot of times individuals who have addictions, they have underlying mental health disorders that they have not realized or recognized, or they just felt like, it's not a big deal. So these types of underlying disorders can cause an individual to feel like they have to do things repetitively in some sort of way in order to find a different result. But in reality, they're finding the same result, and that could cause different types of tendencies towards OCD, which can eventually lead to addictions. And a lot of times when people are at a very, very uh, deep part of their life when it comes to addiction, when they go back to the source, they realize that there's a lot of that mental health situation that was not dealt with either as a child, as an adult, or whatnot. So it's very important to recognize these types of things and see, how much is this addiction interfering into my life?
Mhm.
Is it taking away from my work? Is it taking away from my everyday activities? Is it making me feel like I have to do something because I'm obsessing over it, and then I'm getting the compulsion aspect out of it as well? So that's a very, very important topic that you brought up, and I think being aware of these types of things can really help parents and people who feel like, maybe there's something a little off, and I just need to get a little bit more um, information about what I'm dealing with. So
Yeah. Um, some parents don't even know their teens are drinking until
yeah,
they find bottles hidden in their drawers or under the bed, you know?
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
sometimes they have a friend sleepover and they're experimenting with that stuff and,
Hmm.
as long as that does not turn into something else, you know?
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. And I think it's very important for, parents to recognize those different types of mood changes in the children, are they taking more time to themselves? And do you feel like they're becoming a little bit more manipulative? Because trying to get out of behaviors that parents expect out of children, they try to find ways to become manipulative, do their own types of things. So recognizing these types of things, like, are the children speaking about things, are they hiding things, basically, like, just trying to touch base with your child and understand how they're doing emotionally
Mhm,
wise, and looking at their grades, seeing if anything has changed with grades. Mood changes as well is a very important indicator of that. And although it could be something that children could just do and keep secret, these different types of simple cues can really get an individual to recognize, okay, well, let me sit with my child, let me see what's going on, what differences have occurred within, like, the last month, what can I do to become a part of my child's life? Because a lot of times kids feel as though, if I have more strength over my parent and I feel like I can get away with things, then
mhm,
they won't ever recognize what I'm doing. So when you actually get yourself involved in that and let them know, I'm there for you, even if you're doing something, let me be a part of it. Don't give them that fear as well. A lot of children end up going into addictions because they have a fear of not being able to speak to the family or speak to parents or have
mhm,
someone that can understand them. So they hide it from their family. They end up going to the individuals who they think love them.
mhm,
They get away from the people who do who do love them and honestly and authentically care for them, and they end up going to the people who they think love them and experience fun times with them. Those are the ones that they end up with.
mhm,
So during this time, it's very important to even let them know, to be aware of their environment, the people around them, and to always come to the people who care for them when they're in need,
mhm.
to speak out. Or
When you said that, it reminded me of, something Charles Manson had said that, the
yeah,
people the young people that came to him were the ones that the
mhm,
families didn't wanna hear, any problems, any of their
Yeah.
problems. So that's why they would run away, and he would latch onto them,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
kind of creepy. But when they're easily vulnerable and they don't understand their addiction, and the family isn't, saying, "Hey, what's wrong? Let's get you into a facility or something, or try to help them."
Yeah.
Hey, don't let them run off because they'll fall into the hands of someone like Charles Manson.
Yeah. That's very true. That's very true. Because drugs and alcohol are literally like one of the most dangerous things, even though they're out there and we all have access to them, you know.
Mhm.
But once put in hands of individuals, as you mentioned, that are vulnerable, that let's say they're going through some type of traumatic experience, or they're going through stress, they can't express themselves. They're going to feel like maybe this is a way to just help this one time.
Yeah.
This one time everything will be okay. I'm not going to do
Mhm.
it again, but maybe I just need to refresh. The same way an individual picks up a cigarette and they go out and they smoke, another individual may feel like this is stronger, so maybe this will help me quicker. But what they don't understand is the chemical dependency that the brain ends up having on these substances and
Mhm.
what it does for the brain. So if you think about it, like 20 million, around 20 million people in the world have a substance use disorder, and 1 out of 3 houses have an addiction crisis. So
Mhm.
that's very challenging to just wrap your mind around and just know that so many individuals are dealing with this. And a big challenge that comes along with this is the stigma that comes around addiction. Because
Mhm.
even when a person feels like, okay, I have identified, they may not know at the time that they're drinking that they have an addiction, but once they do identify it's an addiction, now they don't know how to get help. Because if they speak to their parents, they know that their parents are going to look down at them. They may kick them out of the house, or they don't know what the circumstances may be. They tell their friends may look down at them. They may lose their friendship. They don't know who to go to. So that stigma around addiction um, takes away from an individual actually seeking help, when in reality, the second that they have that chemical dependency to the drug, it's out of their hands. So every time they feel like they can get off of it, they become feeling like failures, only because it's not in their hands anymore. This
Mhm.
has become a part of a chemical dependency on the brain has. And so now you need bigger resources and more authoritative resources to take care of that. And so, what I wanted to just share with you, since we're in that depth of the topic, is how um, the addiction feels. And I'm going to just allow you guys to visualize this activity in your mind. So, if I were to give you a bottle of water, and I was also to give you a book, okay? And I asked you, if you had 3 days to survive, which one of these would you take with you that you knew that you would need to take for your survival? Would it be the book or the water bottle?
Yeah. The water bottle.
The water bottle, because if you don't have water within like 3 days, then that's going to kill all your, function in your body. You're not going to be able to survive. It's going to take away from your daily functioning and your life functioning. So, what if I told you you have a water bottle and then you have alcohol and drugs on one side? Which one would you choose that you absolutely cannot survive without for 3 days?
I'd still take the water,
Yeah. And,
but
individuals who don't have addictions and who don't have any challenges that they're dealing with, they definitely would choose water, because that your brain already knows that this is my form of survival. Without water, there's no way I can survive. But
Mhm.
individuals who are addicted end up going for the drugs and the alcohol, even though they know that this is not going to help them, but it just becomes like the first part of the hierarchy level of survival for them.
Mhm.
So I'm going to explain a little bit more of that so we can all get an understanding of how addiction forms in the brain and how it feels for
Mhm.
individuals. So we all have natural addictions, right? Such as food, water, sleep. Like, we need these types of things in order to survive, and our body knows that it needs them. Um, so we repeat them because it's a natural thing that we need, and it's important for our survival. So when we have certain types of food, we clarify them under healthy or unhealthy, right? So we
Mhm.
know when to eat them, when to lessen the amounts of certain ones. So, for example, if you bite into a pear, if I gave you a pear, you bite into a pear, it's going to give you energy. It's nutritious. In your mind, you already clarified this as something healthy. So your brain identifies it as something that's good. And so it releases the chemical dopamine into your body, correct?
Mhm.
And so that causes us to experience a good feeling. And so the brain releases that dopamine to teach the body that the pear is good and that you need it for survival. So it allows you to do it again. Okay. So this is what your brain has already memorized for you. Now, other things release dopamine, such as exercise, sleep, reading, but it does not release dopamine in that amount as it would for food or sleep or exercise or, food, sleep, or water, because these are absolutely necessary for you.
Mhm.
Now, the brain does this to recognize what is more important, right? And if, for example, if you go 3 days without food or 3 days without a book, your body will crave the food
Mhm.
because it identified that this is needed for your survival. Now, the brain creates a hierarchy of survival. So in your brain, you already know that I need water as number one for survival, food for number two, and sleep to get me through my life and my daily functioning. And it ranks how important each one of these things are to your survival. Now, some things will not release dopamine, such as like if you stub your toe, that's not going to release dopamine to make you feel good, so you do it again. You're chewing on, paper, that's not going to release any type of dopamine to make you feel like, this is healthy for me. I'm going to do it again. So your brain knows that it's not good, and it just won't have you do it anymore. So let's look at drugs and alcohol. When we look at drugs and alcohol, when we're in school, what we're told, advertising, all that type of stuff, it's classified as a carcinogen, and it can cause cancer and different types of health effects in the body, especially for a pregnant woman. So the brain should know that it's not good for the body, right?
Mhm.
But what the trick is that there are chemical characteristics that actually fool our brain into releasing even more dopamine. So more dopamine than the food
Mhm.
that we eat, even though that's needed for our survival, this actually releases even more dopamine in the body. So oftentimes it's like much greater than the body has ever experienced. And this is what we call that rush. So the euphoria, the first time an individual puts their hands on a substance or they put their hands on a drug and they say, this is the first time, it's not gonna, do anything. I'm just gonna try it out. A lot of times that first time is the only time that they need to get addicted. And because it releases so much dopamine, everybody goes back to that rush. They always want to take more and more amounts of the drug because they want to go back to that first time rush, which they never will. That first time is the time that will get released the most dopamine in the brain. And that's what also causes overdose. Because when a
Mhm.
person feels like, I need more of this is what I need, this is my survival, they will end up overdosing. And that's what causes a lot of deaths that we've been seeing with addiction as well. But the downside of this as well is that over time, the brain receptors become so overwhelmed and the brain responds by actually receiving less dopamine. So, although it released so much dopamine at the beginning and it kept that thought and that feeling stored in the brain, it's never going to have that type of feeling and emotion ever again. And it's actually lessening the dopamine with every use of substance use or addiction, or sorry, drug addiction as
Mhm.
well. So your brain will get fooled into thinking that these things, the drugs and the alcohol, are more important than food and water. So it hijacks the number one spot in your brain for the hierarchy of survival. So where we had our hierarchy was water, food, sleep, the drugs will go up into that number one spot in your brain
Mhm.
as it's more important than water. So you can go 3 days with no food or no alcohol, but if you have an addiction, your body will crave the alcohol over the food. So you see how it like hijacks your brain to
Mhm.
thinking that it needs it for survival, when in reality, we all know that that's only going to make a person get skinnier. And you see a lot of individuals who are on drugs become so skinny because they feel like, this is my survival. I can go without water, food, it's fine. As long as I have this is all I need.
Mhm.
And extreme cases of addiction, the person may feel like they will die if they don't get the alcohol or the drugs. So the withdrawal can make the person feel that way as well. So when a person's like withdrawing off a medication, it literally, when they explain it to you, they say it feels like their soul is coming out of their body. I mean, it's the most debilitating type of feeling. And it's very challenging. And a lot of the reasons why individuals go back and relapse too, once they're withdrawing, that pain is so debilitating that they actually end up going to relapse. And a lot of people, because they do it on their own, they feel like, I'm not going to survive through this. But when you have that help, the right treatment place, then you can get off of it with a little bit more comfort put in place. And our drinking age, the legal drinking age in our states is 21, and a
Mhm.
lot of that is because our prefrontal cortex has not been formed yet. And so, if an individual uses drugs or alcohol before the age of 21, they're more susceptible to addiction.
Mhm.
And 9 out of 10 individuals who have addictions started drinking or using drugs before age of 21, because the prefrontal cortex actually is the spot where we reason, where we help deal with our impulsiveness, where we have decision making and risk taking. So if that is not formed yet, then you can imagine an individual who has addictions and trying to deal with life, and how challenging that may be.
Mhm.
So I just really wanted to express the importance of that, so we all understand how the drugs and the alcohol and these chemical substances can just take over the brain within the first time an individual puts their hand on them. I mean, you have individuals who smoke 3, 4, 5 packs a day,
Mhm.
and they're able to maintain um, their addiction. It's also an addiction, but when it comes to alcohol and drugs, it's a completely different type of thing with the chemical dependency
Mhm.
for that.
Well, when I was working on the mental health unit, we had, videos we would show patients with group, and they said that, smoking was harder to quit than cocaine because of the nicotine was stronger than the cocaine, and I was surprised at that.
Yeah, yeah, and that also has a lot to do with the amount of nicotine that an individual is has in their body, and the amount of cocaine or years of use of cocaine. Because an individual who, for example, has been using cocaine for, let's say, 6 months, 7 months, a year, and trying to get off of it, compared to someone who has been using it for 10 years, the
Mhm.
withdrawal symptoms are going to be beyond debilitating. And everybody's like different in the way that they actually
Mhm.
deal with that withdrawal. Now, nicotine, of course, it has terrible withdrawal
Mhm.
symptoms.
Mhm.
I mean, it can cause headaches, nausea, brain fog. It can cause terrible, terrible side effects of the withdrawals. At the end of the day, though, it all depends on the person, and the time of use that they've had, been using the drugs or the nicotine, and how much that they can handle, how much their body can handle. Because there are so many individuals that can actually detox on their own off of cocaine in their house.
Mm.
And then there are some that there's no way, like they have to get to a treatment center,
Mhm.
but that also depends on the amount of time that they used, and um, the effects, how strong their immune system is, and how strong
Mhm.
their body can fight back. Because
Mhm.
once a person's getting off these drugs, all your body's chemical substances are getting off track. So your electrolytes are going up and down, your liver is getting affected, your kidneys getting affected, everything, all your organs are getting affected. So if you're very weak in the immune system, then it's the most dangerous thing to detox, or think that you can detox on your own.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's very interesting you brought that up, because so many individuals have, different tolerances to that as well.
Well, even when I was working at the hospital and, someone had an alcohol addiction, and we'd
Yeah.
have to watch them for, the tremors and what to give them when that happened, and that always just scared me because it's like
Yeah.
I have 5 patients, and I've gotta watch this one very closely, and I have to
Mhm.
watch everyone closely, and it was
Yeah.
so, kinda nerve-wracking for a good 8 hours to 12 hours
Yeah.
watching
Yeah.
someone. Ugh.
How would you say, from a nurse's, point of view, when you started getting all these cases, how did you deal with the emotional impact on you all? Because I know that took a big toll on you all. And how did you learn to cope with that, knowing that this individual um, has a dependency, and at any point in time, their body could
Mhm.
shut down,
Mhm.
and it's something new. Like all these addictions also are new types of addictions. It's a new um, epidemic that we're going through. So how were you all able to deal with it as soon as it came into your hands?
Well, I would always tell the patient, "If you feel funny about something, ring your
Yeah.
call bell," and, luckily, we were a good team. If something
Yeah.
happened, and, we had to go get Valium or whatever the doctor ordered.
Yeah.
We would, give it IV push, things like that,
Yeah.
just so they wouldn't go into the convulsions.
Yeah.
And that would scare me if you I don't know, just not used to seeing someone go into convulsions is just
Yeah.
unnerving. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's good that you mentioned that because a lot of individuals think, okay, well, if I have addiction to alcohol, I can get off of it on my own. But in
Mhm.
reality, you can get off of cocaine, you can get off of meth, you can get off of opiates much easier than you ever could get off of alcohol. Even though alcohol is, you go to the ABC store, you sold in restaurants, but that's the most dangerous type of substance to be addicted to. And you
Mhm.
cannot get off of that on your own. You have to seek medical care for that.
Mhm.
Because what you mentioned, convulsions, the electrolytes in the heart, you never know what may happen with the
Mhm.
organs. I mean, they all hit at one point, they all
Mhm.
could shut down. So that's one of the most dangerous things. And it has the easiest access,
Mhm.
which is very scary.
Right, and the fear was also having the patient lose their airway, and then it will get really bad in there, so it just was a I don't know, you were just always on edge the whole shift, we'll just say.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can imagine. My goodness. Well, thank you for giving back in that way because it's not easy. It's not easy. And
Mhm.
um, regardless, even if it's a family member or someone else that you're seeing, if they're in pain, that they're getting hurt because of something that they can't control, and it's not a part of something that they have it's not in their control anymore. It's just a part now of the physical aspect and also the mental aspect of
Mhm.
things and trying to get through that. So
Mhm.
definitely
Yeah.
scary.
And also patients would say that their family doesn't want anything to do with them because of this addiction, and,
Mm,
they're
mhm.
tired of them, so no one's visiting them at the hospital, and, I there's always 2 sides to the coin, who
Yeah.
knows, maybe they burned out those family members, with this
Yeah.
back and forth addiction maybe, I don't know, but,
Yeah.
um, it that was sad though. I mean, even though if they've burned out family members, they still shouldn't be alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. So you brought up some very important points. Um, and that's why when an individual has to go through these types of um, emotions and they have addictions and a lot of times individuals try to solve the problem on their own.
Mhm.
And if you are addicted to something, this is a message to everybody. If you have an addiction to something and you tried once, you tried twice, it didn't work out, go seek professional help
Mhm.
because if you're doing it on your own, of course, everyone around you, you have no idea the amount of stress that your loved ones have to go through to watch you be in pain, to watch you and know your skills, your qualities, and your amazing personality just shatter
Mhm.
because of a pill or because of a bottle of alcohol. For people who love you and are watching over individuals who are addicted, it's the most challenging thing, and they cannot be placed into words. In all honesty, as to
Mhm.
how challenging um, it is on parents. So uh, that's why I encourage, getting treatment at a treatment center where you're under professional help and not having your parents or your loved ones having to watch you go through this pain and feel like hopeless. There's nothing left for
Mhm.
them to do but see you suffer. And
Mhm.
that takes away from their energy to protect that person to give back.
Uh-huh.
So they also need counseling and help after going through something that traumatic because they're giving out of an empty water bottle. They have nothing to give anymore. They're
Mhm.
seeing somebody they love just go through the most debilitating pain and they can't do anything about it. So
Mhm.
yeah, a lot of it can come from, the family members just being so exhausted mentally and emotionally that they don't know how to give back to the individual. And that's why the treatment centers come into play, or even speaking to addiction counselors or
Mhm.
professionals in the field, someone that you can reach out to that can help you move through and understand why you're going through what you're going through and when it's time to make that step and transition to a treatment center. And something else that you brought up, when it comes to showing an individual love
Mhm.
while they're addicted, that is also one of the most challenging things for loved ones because you no longer can show them the same love. Now you have to
Mhm.
show an individual a different kind of love. So, for example, if an individual has an addiction to cocaine and they no longer have any financial stability, but they need to get that cocaine and that, that fix just so they can survive.
Mhm.
And they come up to you and they say, Mom, like, I need money. And they're dealing with so much pain. You see the pain in their eyes, and there's nothing that they can do but get that fix to help them get better. Now, what does an individual do that doesn't know what true love is in that situation? They're going to give them money because, that's your loved one. You don't want to see them get hurt. But
Mhm.
what an individual is actually doing is they're enabling that
Yes.
person to continue doing what they're doing, to continue making them feel comfortable, and to continue with their addiction, and not recognizing it, but that's exactly what's happening. So in order to change um, that person's attitude and the way that they look at life, is you have to make them feel uncomfortable, as hard as it may be. The only support that they should be getting at that time is the support and knowledge of how to seek help, how to get resources, how
Mhm.
to find a treatment center, but nothing in regards to making them feel comfortable. Even if it means that individual has to live on the streets, if it comes down to that, then that's just what it is. Because if a person does not hit rock bottom, they're never
Mhm.
going to change. So, and everybody's rock bottom is different. It could mean losing a family member,
Mhm.
because of what's going on. That could be someone's rock bottom. Someone else's rock bottom could be just being financially unstable completely. And so everybody's rock bottom is differently, but they have to feel it and they have to sense it in order to make a change in their life.
Mhm. And some things are overlooked or not caught. I was watching on Netflix, it was called From Murder to Mercy,
Mhm.
and, it was about this young girl who was 16 who allegedly, committed a murder out of
Yeah.
fear, and there was alcohol everywhere, um, but the thing was, her first legal team failed her. They did not catch that she had symptoms of, fetal alcohol syndrome.
Yeah.
They didn't catch that. No one caught it. No one caught it in a psych eval or anything. But once they caught it and they could show a judge why this happened,
Yeah.
you know, it's not that she was set free immediately, but she had to learn other coping skills.
Yes.
It wasn't her fault she had fetal alcohol syndrome, I mean.
Yeah, that's an important topic that you brought up, because when it comes to addictions, they can also um, be a big part of either, genetics. It's passed down through the family,
Mhm,
of addictive personalities,
mhm,
or like OCD and that type of stuff. Everything that's the base of what addiction is. Also, the environment, everything that you're around, and those influences on a person as well. And these types of things have a big indicator of why individuals end up going into that addiction phase.
mhm,
And so, authorities as well, many authorities do not have the knowledge. Even I'm talking off of treatment centers as well. They do not have the background and they do not have the knowledge to care for individuals who are coming to them for hope. I have had to speak to many treatment centers and talk to their psychiatrists and talk to their psychologists about the treatment that these individuals are getting.
mhm,
And it was very, very sad to
mhm,
see. Very, very sad, because, yes, right now, in any field that you go into, if you're going to get information, um, in the section, the field of, let's say, um, a crime scene investigation, who are you going to go to? You're going to go to the cops, you're going to go to the FBI, and all that type of stuff. So you know that they're the leaders, they're the ones that are taking care of everything. And this is what
mhm,
people are doing in this situation right now too. With a drug addiction, they're going to the psychologists and counselors and everything in these treatment centers. But the problem is, a lot of these treatment centers are government based, and when they're government based, you're just going off of, this person, this is what they have to get regardless of the situation. We're going through something, we have to pass this agenda, and everybody has to go through it. It doesn't matter who they are, what they're going through. At the end of the day, everybody's unique and everybody's different. And there's a lot of dark psychology that's being played in these treatment centers as well, which is very sad and disheartening. So it's very important for individuals to know what type of treatment center they're going into, and ask questions to the max. Like, don't ever feel ashamed of asking too many questions,
mhm,
or you didn't ask, or you maybe you double ask the questions as well, because the communication in those centers is very important to be
Mhm.
aware of, how they communicate with each other, the answers you get. It's very, very important because not every center, just because they have good reviews and whatnot, is one to go to. You have to take more precautions on your end. And that's where, my work comes into play, because I've dealt with a lot of centers here and in Europe as well. And
Mhm.
I've seen the difference, and I've seen, ones that really truly care and
Mhm.
ones that are doing it because the money aspect of it, which is
Mhm.
very hard, especially being in that type of field. It's embarrassing to talk about that, because they're supposed to be leaders of hope. I mean,
Mhm.
there are some centers where they literally will show people who are in detox. Usually they're in detox for 7 to 10 days, but if they decide to leave, let's say earlier, or let's say they don't want to finish the outpatient um, treatment or whatnot, they basically show them a wall full of people's faces that have been there, and they tell them, if you don't finish up, then this is what's going to happen to you. Just like him, he died. You know what I mean? This is exactly what's going to happen to you. Like, I've had so many individuals tell me that, and that is really sad, because that, you're playing dark psychology. You're playing psychology with people who need hope. You know,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
so I tell everybody, be aware of what you get yourself into, do a lot of research, and ask as many questions as you need. And I also have questions that I can mention as well for individuals that may need assistance with that.
Mhm.
But yeah, just, to recognize those types of things is very important as well.
Yeah, that's kinda creepy to show people a board of people that have passed.
Yeah, yeah, and because, when you have the power of psychology in your hand, you can work magic. And that's why we as children, we don't learn this stuff in school. We don't
Mm-mm.
learn the magic of psychology, because if we did, everything would come easier for us. We'd be in control. We'd be in control of everything in our life.
Mm.
We'd understand what we need. We'll know that when we're getting tricked, we'll know when we're getting manipulated. We will understand each other better. We'll accept each other better as individuals. And just with like traveling in general, I traveled to Europe, different places, and I just see the self love and self care that so many countries build, like, in their people. Um, and even though they may be like third world countries, but the love and care that they have for each other, and the support that they have for each other,
Mhm.
is nothing I've ever seen in my whole entire life. You know what
Mhm.
I mean? And it's sad to see that, because I mean, living in different countries, they're the leaders of other countries as well, but they can't even build that self-esteem in in their community, or build that self-love or self-care,
Yeah.
or that mental capability. Because if they do, then how are they going to control? They're not going to be able to control. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So that's the sad thing about certain societies. And so, it's very important to take that into consideration, to know your
Mhm.
influences, to know what you're getting persuaded by, um, and just to be very cautious of everything you get yourself into, and just know what you're looking for and do your research. It's very, very important.
It is. It is, and also, you know, when you're discharged from these places, we always told people, "You have to find new playmates. You can't go back to the people that
Yeah.
you did this with," and that's very hard for people to break those connections.
You're very right. You're very right. And that's why some treatment centers, they actually don't allow you to have cell phones. You can't have cell phone usage at all, maybe just like once a week for a few minutes.
Mhm.
And others, they're okay with it. They don't want to make you feel too uncomfortable in your atmosphere. But once you're away from that, you're actually able to recognize, wow, I was able to survive without this connection. And you start to see the difference between who you were at that stage with those people and who you are now. And you brought up something so important, because even in counseling in general, when you help treat a person, you take them out of that environment, you help treat them for 3 months, let's say, and they're on a different track in their life, and they get put back into that environment that they were in, it's going to make a challenge for everything moving forward for them. It's going to make it even more challenging, and a lot of times relapsing into those behaviors that they had before. So, yeah, when an individual gets out of a treatment center, it's so important to try not to go past those places that you used to go by. You go by certain roads and stuff. Try to take back roads to go around those places, so you don't have to feel the energy of where
Mhm.
you were at previously. Even the people that you were friends with or whatnot, block them, cut them off.
Mhm.
Let them know, I'm on a different path in my life. I know what I want now. Block them out of your phone. Try to get lost, lose every type of connection that you have with them, whether you know them, their friends, family, whoever's related to them, whoever can get in contact, cut them out. It's going to be lonely. It's going
Mhm.
to be a challenge, but a good treatment center will give you the tools and the resources on how to do that. So you brought something up that's very important, Marianne, like to ask that as a question. What tools and resources do I have when I leave? Do I have a community that I can come back to on a weekly basis and have these talks with my counselors? Or, what outpatient centers do you all recommend that I stay in touch with? And a lot of individuals that get out of treatment, they also go to group homes. So they
Mhm.
don't go back and live in their same environment. They go to a group home where people have actually been through addiction as well. They live with 3 other people, including them, and they go to counseling every day. They have basically an individual on campus 24/7 for any help and assistance that's needed. They get evaluated on a regular basis. They encourage each other, and that also helps them get through that phase of life,
Mhm.
because the most challenging phase of life for an individual who's addicted and who has gone um, through the withdrawals and is out of the detox and everything is that phase where they see where they could have been, but they see where they're at now. And that brings up so much um, anxiety for a person, and it makes them feel like it stresses them out, because they know that I now have to get a job, I now have to search for a house, I have to do this, and they have all these responsibilities that fall back on them because they're now aware of what they should be doing in their life, that they felt like could have helped them get to where they need to be. Their emotions are on beyond intense
Mhm.
level of understanding. Like, we deal with emotions every day, and we still have sadness that we feel, anger, anxiety. Like, imagine a person who hasn't felt these things for 10 years, 20 years,
Mhm.
and it hits them all of a sudden. So you have this little gap after you get good and you're off, your detox and everything, and you see where your plans are, and you made all these plans, but now you have to deal with these emotions and everything. So sometimes even this little period right there can make a person relapse, because
Mhm.
it's so challenging to deal with these emotions. But what I do, like, even as in my life coaching, is individuals who have addictions, they come see me, and we work for the time being, before they even get into a treatment center, or while they're getting out of the treatment center. We do activities on brain work and
Mhm.
strengthening mindset and impulse, and looking at life from a different perspective. So once they go through this phase, it's not a challenge for them. They have the resources, they have the tools that they need. So they don't feel as overwhelmed as they would if it just hit them dramatically.
That would
So
be, yeah, very challenging.
yeah, yeah. And so I really encourage individuals to just be aware. This could happen, that you may feel with so much intensity of emotions, but it's okay, because there's an answer. You
Mhm.
have counselors, you have outpatient centers, you also have inpatient centers if you absolutely need to go. Like, there are so many resources out there, but some people just don't know how much access they can have. And there's also free resources for individuals who have maybe a little bit of financial instability at the time,
Mhm.
because getting out of something like that, most of the time, there is no stability in anything. So there are resources that are provided as well
Mhm.
for individuals. So there's something everywhere. And I just want to make individuals aware of that they always have that access.
I also think in prisons, there should be better programs for these people.
Hmm.
There, more of the harder core drugs.
Hmm.
Some of these prisons really should be detox centers, to be
Yeah.
honest.
No, you're definitely right. You're definitely right. You brought something up that's so important. I actually know one of my clients that was on really hard drugs, and they ended up going to jail during the time that they were, on their addiction, and they ended up detoxing in jail. So you can imagine, and they had no help. Nobody gave them anything to help with the emotional aspect of it, and just the physiological aspect. I mean, it was. He said that it felt like death, literally.
Mm.
There was nothing that he could have done except for just go through with the feelings and the emotions that he was dealing with.
Mhm.
So yeah, there are a lot of authoritative figures out there that still are not equipped on the knowledgeable side of what addiction is. And I think not having this educational background can really um, profile an individual going anywhere, and anyone who gets in trouble or anyone that's dealing with something can get really profiled the wrong way, instead of
Mhm.
actually trying to seek help or like encourage that help, because that's what they need. You know, an individual who is going through these addictions, they want people to know them as who they were before they got addicted, you know.
Mhm.
And when they have like even authoritative figures that are against them, then they feel like, well, what's the point of, you know, getting help? I mean, I already have everybody against me. What's the point of everybody sees me this way? So why should I prove otherwise? If they see
Mhm.
me this way, then that's what I am. So just getting that background on what addiction is and how
Mhm.
to encourage seeking help, or like if a person gets caught doing something wrong with authoritative figures, then knowing exactly who to send them to. Because sometimes family members, it's hard for them to send their loved ones to these places because they can't even like basically tame the individual. Sometimes the drugs can make a person come out of their own skin and just become the most aggressive people, the most manipulative people. And so sometimes for loved ones, it's hard to even like manage that. All they see is the control and the aggressiveness and the screaming and the yelling, that they don't know how to even access help for that person. So if an authoritative figure can actually recognize that this person is going through an addiction and knowing where to put them,
Mhm.
exactly where to, you know, place them for help, that would be very helpful as well if they have that knowledge and they get that knowledge also,
Mhm. And
because
with
it's still, sorry,
yeah.
go
Oh, no,
ahead.
you go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I was gonna say, like, it's still so fresh, you know?
Yeah.
So even what happens with individuals' brains after
Mhm.
um, their detox completely off of it, nobody knows what happens a few years down. I mean, so many individuals that you know, get addicted. These are some of the most amazing people in the world. I have come across some of the most
Mhm.
um, you know, influential, persuasive, like so creative people in the world. But some people just see the world differently. They can't express their feelings, or they've been through trauma, or you know, they just don't know how to deal with their emotions. They weren't taught that. They weren't taught how to regulate emotions growing up.
Mhm.
So sometimes they felt like, maybe, okay, I'll just use this just to help me. Or sometimes they were put on medication by doctors themselves. You know what I mean? The doctors themselves have been recommending high doses
Mhm.
of opiates, and then they take them away all of a sudden. So what's the person going to do
Mhm.
to survive? In their mind, the first thing that comes to mind is going on the streets and getting it off the street. And now we
Mhm.
have fentanyl as the biggest, you know, issue that we're dealing with, and
Mhm.
it could be laced with anything. So that's something that's very challenging as well. So it's kind of like, you know, you can't make a person get addicted to something, know the physiological and the cognitive components that occur during this stage, and then have them do what they do and then blame them for it. You
Mhm.
know, like, yeah, they shouldn't, nobody should do this type of stuff, but it's important to understand what's going on, so we as individuals, as a society, can help with that and know who to you know, give that authority to basically not influence these types of things onto people. Because what do you, I mean, doctors, they're the first thing that come to our mind when we need assistance. That's they're the ones that we go to, you know. But to
Mhm.
see that some doctors actually recommend this stuff for individuals, and it's killing them, and
Mhm.
it's making them go down really crazy, chaotic paths for their lives, is really disheartening
Mhm.
to see. So yeah,
Yeah.
I always say, you know, if you get um, prescribed an opiate, if you can find something else instead that can actually help, that has the strength but not the addictive qualities, then definitely go for it. Because a lot of individuals that I've had as clients have gotten addicted off of just recommended dosage from doctors themselves.
Mhm. Mhm.
And they've been addicted for 20 years, 15, 20 years, you know?
Oh, that's a
So yeah,
shame.
yeah.
Yeah, that and on top of this low self-esteem, uh, between, perhaps family members putting them down, like, "Why haven't you
Mhm.
kicked this yet?" People making comments, it's just, and they're
Yeah.
trying hard, and, maybe there are some that aren't trying hard and just are just gonna go with it, but there are people that want to dig themselves out of that hole, and they need support instead of someone saying, "Oh, well, snap out of it," you know?
Yeah. Exactly, exactly. And, you know, because we now know like the chemical dependency on it, no matter how much a person tries to get off of it, they will try and they will try and they will try, and they'll still feel like failures. and the withdrawal symptoms will be terrible. So they're going to feel like, okay, if I'm a failure trying to get off of this medication and it hurts this much, no, I'll just stay, taking it instead. It's easier for me. It gives me peace of mind. I'm not going through the pain. I'm not hearing that I'm a failure for my family. I'm actually doing something for myself that's making me happy.
Mhm.
So like if we know anyone that's addicted, they want you to see them as the person that they were before their addiction. And they need that support. And if they're acting out, then acting out of control, I just want everyone to be aware that drugs have a big component of how they control an individual. They will make them manipulative.
Mhm.
They will have them lying to their own family. They'll make them aggressive. They'll do so many things to them. They'll make them even sound bipolar. Once they're
Mhm.
talking, they'll say one thing, they'll forget,
Mhm.
and I mean, it changes the brain's capacity in so many ways. So they need your love more than any time before, and they don't know what normal feels like anymore. When a person has been addicted for so long, they don't even know what normal feels like anymore. So we, as their loved ones, we want to help them and remind them of who they were, what their
Mhm.
skills were, what their passions were, without shaming them and without, making them feel guilty, but to let them know that we are encouraging them to get help and to remind them of who they were, even if they don't want to hear it. It
Mhm.
sinks in their mind. And when they're alone, that's going to be their sense of hope. When they
Mhm.
see, oh, wow, they still remember me as who I am. That's very important, just to show love and encourage and support them, but just not to enable them
Right.
in any sort of way. And something as well that people can think about when it comes to addiction is that an individual's sense of control is also altered completely. So if I were to give an individual who's addicted to, let's say, cocaine, and they have a really bad addiction, if I gave them a year's supply of cocaine, they could probably finish it up within a week
Mhm.
or two, or at that moment, and just end up having an overdose because they have no sense of control anymore, because
Mhm.
that aspect of their brain is altered. So you think about sense of time, sense of this, work atmosphere, even making decisions, all that type of stuff is just altered completely. Even the reasoning about things is altered.
Mhm.
So that's why it's hard for an individual to get a job during that time, to even keep a job, or to even have a relationship. And individuals that find relationships during this time, is very challenging, because a lot of times they go for people who are dealing with the same type of problems that they're dealing with. So in reality, they're supposed to grow and heal. They're probably good for helping each other heal, but most of the time these individuals that they find, they're just matching their energy. They're not actually on that healed aspect of things. Same as what we spoke about in our last podcast.
Mhm.
If you're not healing yourself, you're attracting the people who see your pain or who see the energy of what you're going through.
Mhm.
So that's very important, even when it comes to addiction, in
Mhm.
that way as well.
Because people can pick that up if these aren't the right, obviously, you know, unsavory individuals. They see that they're vulnerable.
Yes.
Oh, not
That
good.
Yeah, you're definitely right. That vulnerability can do a lot, because then some individuals can feel like, oh, I can take advantage, I can
Mhm.
take advantage of the money. I can even trick them, because they know, a lot of individuals, they can tell what that person's going through. They know that they have brain fog. They don't know how to control anything. And if you're with a really, really dangerous person, they
Mhm.
can trick you into thinking that you've gone crazy. You know what I mean? Like, where
Mhm.
they can take your money from you. They can tell you things and make you feel like you have said things that you really didn't. And then a lot of times those people get addicted to those individuals, because they feel like, oh, wow, they know me better than anyone else does. And
Mhm.
I've been vulnerable with them, and I can express my feelings, and they're protecting me. But in reality, that's why during this time, it's the worst time to be in a relationship,
Mhm.
going through addictions, because you're just attracting the wrong energy to you,
Mhm.
for
Yeah,
sure.
people don't realize this, and how easy it is to slip into an addiction, as you said, if you have an addictive personality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I also want to mention is, a lot of people look at addiction as it's the problem. I mean,
Mhm.
if people have addictions to shopping, have addictions to spending money, and have addictions to gaming and all that type of stuff, then we have to understand that the problem is not the addiction; it's the reason why an individual is addicted. So, what that underlying thing is that caused the person to reach for that, or who prescribed that medication for them, or what encouraged them to do this, That's what we have to solve, not the addiction itself, because once that's solved, then there's not going to be an addiction. You're going to be able to detach health in a healthy way. You're going to be able to understand your feelings in a healthy way as well, and see life from a different perspective than what you feel that you have been seeing it for as long as you have. So that's very important because that takes away the stigma from addiction as well. I mean, there are so many people who are deceitful
Mhm.
and they do that on a regular basis. They do it to everybody. There's so many people
Yeah.
who, they wish bad for individuals. They
Mhm.
trick people. They have a really bad agenda out there. That's an
Mhm.
addiction as well. But just because it doesn't have stigma around it doesn't mean that it's not something toxic or something absolutely
Mhm.
challenging to live by. That actually is one of the most challenging things, to have a soul that's embodied in that type of thing.
Okay.
Because addiction, you can get out of, you can learn methods, you can learn ways. Somebody who has a soul like that, it's something they have to live with, you know. So that,
Mhm.
if you want to look at addiction and you want to really stigmatize it, then there's so many things that could be stigmatized, but it's just gone undercover and under
Mhm.
the table. So I just, feel like if we try to understand addiction in a different way, lessen the stigma around it, allow people to reach out. And if you see someone who's going through an addiction, just asking, how are you doing? Like, are you okay? What's going on? Like, being
Mhm.
able to connect on that
Mhm.
level can change an individual's life in so many ways,
Mhm.
and allow us to not see surface level, to dig deeper into something more amazing, that we
Mhm.
all have a connection with as well.
And I think when people say afterwards, if someone has been addicted and then they're better and a relative will say, "Well, I didn't wanna call you and I didn't wanna disrupt your" maybe you wanted privacy and I just wanted to give you your privacy. And I think that's the wrong thing to do, that when someone's going through this or any
Mhm.
other problem, you
Yeah.
should call, check frequently. Tell
Yes.
if you need someone to talk to, I'm here. If you don't feel like talking right now, that's fine too, but I'm just checking on you.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. I love that, Marion. That's so important because a lot of times those drugs will make a person tell their loved ones, I need to be alone. I don't want to have anyone around. I don't need
Mhm,
to call you. And a lot of times people will hear that.
mhm,
And they will say, I need my privacy. You're getting on my nerves. You're controlling my life.
mhm,
But because they know that in order to continue this addiction, they can't have eyes on top of them. If they have eyes on top of them, then they're not going to be able to get that um, that satisfaction from their addiction. So they're going to push everyone they love away. And you're going to recognize that they have the people who are actually abusive towards them in their life.
mhm.
And so, yes, always on top of messaging, being there, checking up occasionally, just passing by to check up.
Yeah.
Um, you know, um, and another thing that individuals don't understand, when their family's involved or when their loved ones are involved, the family's always making sure they're alive.
Mhm,
It's not even caring to check up anymore. It's making sure they haven't overdosed today,
mhm,
or it's making sure they made it through the night and they're alive in the morning. So
mhm,
people who are going through addiction, they don't recognize that this is what people care about around them. They just feel like it's the control thing. It's, why are you getting on my nerves? I'm a man or I'm a woman. I'm old enough to take care of myself.
mhm,
But in reality, all that is altered at that time.
mhm.
So they need the most care and the most attention at that time, because it just the brain chemistry is all altered completely.
Right. And especially around the seasons, especially Christmas,
Oh,
you know, this is it's very hard on, addiction types of, drugs, alcohol, whatever,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I think people should just be kinder, eh, to everyone.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you brought something important as well. Even on family get-togethers and whatnot, it's good to know if someone has had some type of addiction history, because placing alcohol drinks on the table, or even
Mhm,
even having medication bottles around individuals who have had addictions, that could really be a trigger for
mhm,
bringing back past memories, or even feeling like um, being involved in that type of behavior again. So just knowing, that these times, especially when COVID started, so many people went back to relapsing because of the
mhm,
stress load that they had. And that's why it's so important for individuals who are getting over addiction to actually learn how to cope with stress, learn how
mhm,
to cope with their emotions, because they're going to feel it more intense than ever. So knowing that it's okay, and you know uh, they actually, individuals who get out of detox and people who have been addicted to different types of things, they're actually some of the luckiest people on this earth.
Mhm.
And they may not know it, but they're actually they're getting a fresh new start with life. They're having a fresh slate. You know what I mean? Now they can rebuild themselves
Mm.
from nothing. Like they can mold themselves. And so many of us can do that. But because we don't get the chance to actually sit with ourselves and have that quiet time and get away from all of the persuasions that we have and the social media and just life in general, we don't get the chance to remold ourselves as we actually can. So people who have been through addiction and actually go through a treatment center are away from society and can actually remold themselves.
Mhm.
That's the strongest, like that's the most powerful thing that a person can have, and the
Mhm.
most beautiful gift if actually looked at in that way.
Mhm.
So not everyone can have that opportunity. I
Mhm.
call that an opportunity, honestly. It's a second
Yes.
chance at life, second chance at just making things better. You know what you were at. I mean, you have all these questions where they say, "Oh, what would you have done differently at this age?" Or,
Mhm.
and you can't really make a difference or change that. But
Mhm.
once you're on a clean slate, your mind is fresh, you have a new palette to draw
Mhm.
on. So it's absolutely a beautiful blessing. As much as it is challenging,
Mhm.
something beautiful comes out of it as well. Because sometimes people who have gone through addictions, they may not have had that emotional regulation growing up, or the ability to maybe be in control of their lives because they had a lot of things handed to them, or they just
Mhm.
just never had the ability to just regulate things in their life. And sometimes these types of things happen, but it's to show them a different way of life. It's to show them that, okay, this is going to be a challenging part, a journey, but there's something better waiting for you, and you may have to go through this just so you can make it through and see the strength that you have coming out of this for yourself. So
Mhm.
honestly, it could be very eye-opening for
Oh,
an
yeah.
individual.
Yeah. And just
Yeah.
to, let families know just to have patience.
Yeah.
If you're burned out, then, the families need to talk to a counselor, like you said,
Yes.
and, this too shall pass,
Yes.
you know?
Absolutely, absolutely, and sometimes a person may feel like it's a vicious cycle.
Mhm.
An individual may get better, they may go to a treatment center, and they may relapse again, but sometimes it may take more than one treatment center. Not every treatment center is going to be the perfect fit for an individual, and you may just have to try things out, just like with having a counselor. You know what I mean? You try different things, different counselors, different
Mhm.
methods for you, and see which one works out for you.
Right.
And so, although it may feel like a vicious cycle and like a never-ending nightmare, there is an answer at the end. It just
Mhm.
may take a little bit of tries at first. And there are so many new things that have come out now as well.
Mhm.
In order to help an individual not relapse, there is a different dose, type of dosage that can be taken that can help an individual not relapse by 90% after they get out of a treatment center.
Mhm.
There are different types of nutritionist addiction counselors who know how to test your organs and make
Mhm.
sure that your organs are back at the level that they have to be, and they give you natural medication to help with addiction. So there are so many resources out there that we can access and that give us hope that, okay, yes, this may be the most challenging thing that we have encountered in our lives, but hey, there are resources, and you have everything out there.
Yeah.
Just open yourself out to that.
Mhm. Yeah, and, it's just a matter of just keep going, you
Yeah.
know?
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Just keep pushing through.
Mhm.
And honestly, when you learn to love someone in a different way, when you don't enable and you learn to love someone in a different way, it
Mhm.
brings out a different strength, even in the loved ones. It brings out a different strength in them that they didn't know that they had.
Mhm.
So they start to not take things as personally. They start to have more patience as well. They start to look at life differently as well. So even having to learn to love someone
Mhm.
differently builds a different type of character within you. So I always say, we don't get put into situations for no reason. We
Mhm.
get put into them because it's going to bring something out of us that's amazing,
Oh,
as much as
yes.
challenging as they may be. But at the end of the day, there's something that's going to come out of the situation. Always to look to the brighter side.
Oh, yeah.
Thank God that this happened and it wasn't this bad. They're still alive. They're still here with me.
Mhm.
It could be worse in situations. So always trying to see the bright side out of it. I
Mhm.
feel has helped so many of my clients and so many individuals in general, um, through the survival mode of the situation.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I'm glad we had this discussion, especially, I hate to say before the holidays, but
Yeah.
it landed this way, so maybe that's a good thing for people to hear.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, definitely. You don't know who may need to hear this, and sometimes people don't open up or reach out because they don't know where to start. So hopefully, this is like a starting point for any individual that's looking to seek help,
Mhm,
or looking to speak to somebody, just so that everyone is out there to support. And there are groups
mhm,
for families as well. Families can go to group meetings and just have that peace of mind and see that there are other individuals dealing with the same exact thing. You're never
mhm,
alone. I
mhm.
think that's one thing that a lot of people fall into, believing that we're all alone, we're all having to deal with this on our own because we are an individualistic society. But I want everyone to know that you're not alone. We're all in this together.
Mhm.
Everybody can help out in some sort of way. So everybody has some type of information that can help your puzzle pieces get put together.
Most definitely. Now, I mean, I'd like to have you back on again because
Oh,
we always have these interesting talks,
yes, yes,
and this was
absolutely. Thank you.
excellent.
Thank you.
And, I will put your contact information into the podcast notes so people
Yeah,
can find you if they have any questions for you.
of course. Thank you so much. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I believe I would just say, every challenge has an answer, and
Mhm.
every challenge becomes one of our skills. So let's push through everything, and we're all in this together. We all have each other's back. And if anyone needs any assistance in any of these topics, to please feel free to get in contact with me. I'm always available to help out.
Right. Thank you so much. Well, don't jump off. Slam the
Okay.
Gavel's a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these family courtrooms. I am your host, Marianne Petrie, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth. Please join us again here with Shurouk Mansour in the future and other exciting guests. Thank you again. I totally appreciate you.
You're more than welcome. Thank you so much, Marianne.